So Spencer and I are recording this portion of the show 2 days after we recorded the rest of the show. And the reason we're doing that is because Jen from Beacon Coffee was so nice to send us a very, very special coffee to taste. So I'm going to show the bag now. I think you pronounce that Gakuyini. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but that's okay. And this is an archived coffee. It's just a stunning, very special coffee from Kenya. And they sent it to us especially so we could taste it. So we're going to taste it now with you all listening and watching. And we're going to give you our impressions. So Spencer, why don't you start off by giving it a taste and letting me know what your impressions are.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jim. Let's see.
Also, by the way, while you're getting a good sip there, we're going to talk about how we prepared each one of our coffees. So give me your thoughts on that, Spencer.
So it's really fresh. It has the flavors of almost farm freshness to it. Like it just came out of the field. Like it was freshly harvested. It's sweet, complex, lightly chocolatey. I actually taste a little stone fruit in there too. It's very unique. It kind of coats the tongue in interesting ways. Like it leaves this nice long linger for me.
Yeah, and how did you prepare it?
So I prepared mine in a Chemex pour over.
Chemex, okay.
Used the water and poured it over, but I also had a stainless steel filter that was built with lasers to leave little holes in it. So
okay, so no paper, stainless steel, getting the full oils right in the cup.
Yeah, and I like that way sometimes because it's more oils, it's more boldness. You lose a little bit of the fruit flavor, you get more with the paper, but
yeah,
I'll have to brew another cup like that later.
Yeah, sure. Actually, I brewed mine with paper. So the first thing I noticed in mine was the brightness. There's this beautiful brightness right up front when it first hit my palate. And let me just say, I used a Hario V60. So I did a pour over with a paper filter. I rinsed the paper filter first and did a traditional 16:1 ratio with a 3-minute brew time. So also 30-second bloom time. So poured in 60 grams of water onto the coffee grinds themselves, let them rest that way for 30 seconds, and then filled up the other 320 grams. So I used 20 grams total of coffee, 320 of water. 3-minute brew time came out beautiful.
That Hario, is that the one that fits on top of the cup?
Yep,
just brewing like just one cup.
Yep, it's glass. It has a little plastic handle on it so that you can, you don't break it very easily.
Touch it.
But it's glass. Everything that the coffee touches is glass, and it sits right on top of your cup. And yeah, you just pour the water over your grinds. But there's a very specific, like that 16:1 ratio is fantastic. And then making sure it's done brewing in about 3 minutes is really important as well. So you got to get your grind size right. So that brightness is beautiful coming off of the first sip is hitting that brightness. Yeah, I taste those chocolatey notes as well, Spencer. I'm looking forward to tasting this also because a paper filter does absorb those oils. So you don't get the oils in the coffee or nearly as many of them. So I'm also looking forward to seeing what this tastes like with those oils present as well. But this is a stunningly beautiful coffee. I'm just drinking this black. There's no sugar. There's no creamer of any kind in this. Just tasting it for what it is. And it is special for sure. This is a rare treat to get something like this. So Jen, again, thank you. We really appreciate it. We'll get on with the rest of the show. Welcome to Beverages, Bites, and Banter. This is a show where Spencer and I talk about the most important things in life. Things like coffee and whiskey. Things like technology. Sometimes we'll talk about important life lessons that we've learned over the years. Basically, almost any topic is fair game. But today, we're joined by Jen Wheir of Beacon Coffee, which is based in Ventura, California. Jen, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. How are you guys?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm doing well. So glad you could be here. Just to give a little bit of a quick summary up front here, we're going to talk to Jen about her company, Beacon Coffee, and we're going to talk about buying coffee, single estate coffees, something called the Coffee Collective, which sounds really cool and interesting. We're also going to get into some little deeper subjects like climate change, maybe technology's impact on coffee sourcing, and what coffee suppliers and coffee producers are doing to make sure that they can make a good living. So some pretty heavy stuff coming today. But before we get to all of that, I've got a hugely important question for everyone. What are you all drinking today?
I am drinking some beacon coffee from my collector's shipment called La
Yay.
Pastora, and it is a
Hmm.
African washed, which I definitely want to know more about what is African washed, but it's absolutely delicious. When I brew it, it smells like chocolate covered raspberries to me, which I don't normally put sugar and cream in my coffee, but in this one, I'm starting to have a habit of having two drinks on the show. So I have one black and one with sugar and cream.
Nice.
Sweet.
But yeah,
Awesome.
this one is absolutely amazing.
What is African washed coffee? I've never heard of that personally. Jen, can you describe that to us?
Yeah, it's something that I have never seen until Miner started doing it. And he does really, really small batches of this. He's extremely experimental, loves to take risks. This coffee, so what they do is they pick it at its peak ripeness. It goes into a container, no water or anything. It just stays in there for about 24 to 36 hours. At that point, it's water is added, and then there's a gentle stirring that happens over the next couple of days, and that's the fermentation. Then it's removed out of the container and pulped and dried. The that first part that I was talking about, the cherry starts to macerate itself into the seed, which we know is the bean. So that fruit note that you're tasting, that's exactly where that's coming from. It's similar to a natural process, but it's not dried with the cherry. It's that first step where it's just hanging out for that period. Yeah, and he named it African washed. I think because it doesn't involve any water, which is very typical in Africa. There isn't any
It re-
water used.
it reminds me of a sun-dried Ethiopian, but different.
Totally.
It's almost like Guatemala and the Ethiopians had a baby and came together.
Oh,
It's
wow.
just chocolatey and berry.
The terroir, the area that this is actually grown in the Terzi Valley is the Dota region, which is really known for its wininess. So I think that's also what you're tasting. You're tasting where it's grown. So that combined with the process.
That sounds incredible.
And that's the difference.
All right.
Yeah.
Nice. Good choice today, Spencer. Awesome. And Jen, how about you? What are you drinking?
Well, I've had a lot of coffee already today. So I am drinking some mezcal on the rocks with some fresh squeezed citrus because citrus is going off right now. It's the season here in Southern California. So that's what I'm having.
Nice. Do you have a
I
preferred
love mezcal.
mezcal?
Mm. This is I'm mixing mezcal just because, obviously I'm not drinking it straight. I'm loving exploring all the artisanal, like the really small batch stuff that's coming out of Oaxaca in different areas of Mexico. I can't think of any name off the top of my head because I'm still learning, but I love that smokiness. And I actually fell in love and discovered mezcal in Colombia on one of our trips.
Oh, wow.
And they mixed it with fresh passion fruit and a worm salt, which was kind of wild. So.
All right. That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Nice smoky stuff. So I actually have a cocktail today, which is the first time I've had a cocktail on the show here. And I mixed this one up. This actually has whiskey in it. But this cocktail, I don't even know what to call it. So my wife found a version of this at a sushi bar in Miami. And what's in here is some whiskey and some yuzu juice and some ginger syrup. So that's the total drink. And then it's got a sugared rim on this coupe glass. And it is absolutely delicious. I don't know if you've ever had yuzu fruit, but it's an Asian, almost kind of like a lemon, but it's a citrus, but it's hard to describe. I haven't been able to really pinpoint what yuzu tastes like because it tastes like itself, right? It tastes like its own thing. So that's what I've got.
Cheers.
I'm taking a sip and then let me show you the bottle. So this has a very particular whiskey in it, Nika coffee grain whiskey. So this is a Japanese whiskey that is not, it's not like a Scotch at all. It's not peaty at all. So there's none of that smokiness. But the combination of this coffee grain whiskey and that yuzu juice and the the ginger syrup, just delicious. So a little piece of heaven right after work today.
All right. Well deserved.
Thanks. Yeah, it's been a long day. It's been a long day at the office. So, all right, cool. So let's kind of jump into things. First of all, Jen, why don't you tell us just a little bit about Beacon Coffee Roasters?
Sure. Yeah, we started in 2010, really with the mind of seeing how coffee is sourced and how much work goes into the actual growing, and not really seeing that being highlighted or talked about by the consumer on this side. So, John and I have been in coffee for a little while. I've been in coffee for 20 years. John has been in coffee for almost 30 now. So yeah, we wanted to do it in a different way where we were really highlighting the growers and the process. And we really love single varietal coffees, interesting processes, small micro lots. We source everything directly. We've been working with the same families now since we opened shortly after. And then there's also some relationships that John rekindled, in from his previous coffee excursions. So yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. So we're just a small roaster in Ventura. We have a really tiny cafe in the front. We do wholesale. A big part of our business is our coffee collective, which is our monthly subscription that we've set up much like a CSA with the mind to support growers in their really fun experiments like the one that we were talking about earlier, the African washed coffee from Miner.
Yeah, very cool. So let's say someone wanted to get some of your coffee or maybe join the coffee collective. How do they do that?
Go to our website, beaconcoffee.com. You can order online, or if you're close by, you can go to the Where to Buy page where you can find all of our wholesale partners. And yeah, you can also join the collective online there. Although we'll be closing that up soon because we're getting to a size where we won't be able to continue to just buy that small amount, which was the whole point of us starting it in the first place. So join quickly because we'll be closing it probably in the next month or so.
Oh, wow. Okay. So yeah, if you want to get in on that, you've got to do it soon. I think I'm going to have to go out and make sure that I do that right after the show here.
I've been a member since it started, and you just get to take a trip around the world to so many different places and trace some of the ones. I remember you guys sent out a geisha at one point that was the top RFA coffee in the world, and it's everything. So many different varieties and things you would never see or understand. You get to kind of experience. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's one of my favorite things about coffee in general. It's, a lot of people think of coffee as one dimensional, right? And I know that my parents think of coffee as just like some throwaway thing. That's this terrible stuff that they used to drink as, for many years they've done that. And I've actually started to introduce them to, what I consider real coffee or all the different flavors around the world because it's so diverse and so varied. So hopefully that's one of the things that people will take away from the shows that we do where we've got coffee on it, is that there's this huge world of different flavors. And it's incredible how the, really good roasters like the folks at Beacon or some of the others that we've had on the show, how they can coax out these amazing flavors.
Yeah. Really special, unique stuff that you can't find anywhere else. And much like some of the other guests that you've had that I've seen, they're buying the really small, special micro lot stuff because that is one of the beauties of being a smaller roaster is you can support those smaller farms and highlight those really special individual, like single varietals. The big guys can't, because it's not enough coffee for them to even roast and support, one or two of their cafes.
Right.
So for us, that was one of the main reasons why we started the collective, is because there was, a bag or two being 150 pounds per bag available, really interesting stuff, and being able to more or less get in the boat with the farmers and say, yeah, like and everyone, all the members are getting in too. It's much like a CSA where everyone is basically investing in these farmers year over year. And Spencer has been a member since we started the collective 10 years ago, which is so crazy that we started 10 years ago. And it's grown organically. Wild. It's been amazing. And the support that we get and the genuine interest of the stories. That's one of the big things. Each week I send out a newsletter, or each release I send out a newsletter with photos of the farms, the processing, the families, a little history about how they got into coffee, and something, educational. That's a really big thing for us at Beacon, is education. In the very beginning, we started doing public cupping so that we could talk to people about, why these coffees were so interesting and different than the stuff that you can find on the shelf at a grocery store. And so now education has become one of our biggest points of our business. We run classes several times a month, all different kinds of brewing classes and barista classes. And
so on that topic of education, really quickly, you've used the
mhm.
acronym CSA a couple of times, but there might be some listeners who don't know what that acronym stands for. You want to share? I think it's crop
Oh yeah,
share or
sorry.
something.
Community supported agriculture.
So I got it
It's
completely wrong. That's
something
what you're
that a
telling me.
lot. So yeah, so it's basically, I became familiar with it. I'm not originally from California. I'm originally from the East Coast, but I became familiar with it being in Southern California because we have so many small farms around us, and they run CSAs. So they have families that say, yeah, I'm in for this season. And then with the amount of people that they have that they know that they're going to supply in the next season, they buy all the seeds, they get everything growing, and then it's all individually, or it's all divided up equally amongst all of the community, the people that have invested in the farm. So that's really the way that we are operating it. I think it's a really cool idea.
Yeah, that's amazing. I've actually been a part of a CSA before. When I lived up in Idaho, we had some CSAs up there, and it's a great thing to participate in. I love that you have a version for coffee. That's incredible. So for anybody listening, if you have a CSA near you, it's a great way to get your local produce. And obviously, the Coffee Collective here is a very limited time thing. It's going to be closing up soon, so you'll want to get in on that while you still can. So let's talk about some deeper stuff here now. Let's jump into the buying side of coffee. I think it's really interesting. We've mentioned these like microlots, like very small amounts of coffee that you all are able to find. First of all, I'm sure there's quite a process in finding and locating this stuff. So why don't you tell us a little bit about this? Give us some stories about how you find the coffee that you are roasting.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's relationships, really. We started by, like I mentioned before, reaching out to some relationships that John had working for some other coffee companies when he was younger, going down and visiting them. And then, inevitably, there's usually, a friend that's growing coffee down the street. Or if we're working directly with the mills, they're bringing different coffees in from the area. So we get to taste a lot of coffees, visit the farms themselves. We take all of that into account. The coffee can taste great, but if we go to the farm and it's not clean, they're not treating the workers fairly, they're not getting paid fairly, that's a deal breaker for us. So having relationship is something that they can count on us. They know they have a buyer, and we know that we have a coffee source. And, all of these deals are always done via handshake, but being in person and making the effort and going down and tasting the coffees and seeing the issues and things that come up with the growing, it's super important. It's important for us to go down and see that. And that's how we get those super unique coffees. Specifically in Costa Rica, we met Miner years ago, and that was through our relationship with La Manita out of Bustamante in the Tarrazú Valley of Costa Rica. And they own a mill there, and they were bringing Miner's coffee in. Miner knows exactly what he has. He knows the quality of his coffee. And that is something that we're finding more and more of, which I fully support, because we need to support quality over quantity when that's applicable. Obviously, every single bit of coffee that comes off the tree isn't the best. There's a market for every coffee. There's a coffee for every market. I'm not poo-pooing, different qualities of coffee, but I think that we need to support farmers in knowing what they have, asking for not just a fair price, but cost of production plus a quality differential. We want folks to continue to grow coffee. And if we're not going to incentivize them by paying them what the coffee is worth, then why would they continue to do it?
Right.
And unfortunately, we are seeing some, some farms that their kids are not interested in taking over. We also are seeing the complete opposite, like the Silva family in El Salvador. We buy a ton of coffee from them. They've been growing coffee for 5 generations now. And their oldest son went to college here in the States, and then he went back down to El Salvador to learn the business. And he's diversifying, he's bringing in different varietals from Africa and all over the world and experimenting with growing different things to stay relevant. And they know exactly what they have. They're vertically integrated. They know, they take it from the top to the bottom. And we continue to see amazing coffee coming out year after year after year. And when we go down and we do cuppings with them, they last a long time. Big tables, lots of coffees. They're taking notes. Carmen is in the corner taking notes about every single coffee. She wants to hear everyone's feedback on every coffee on the table. And they take that back and they take those notes and that feedback into the next harvest. So, going back to how do we get those coffees, it's maintaining those relationships. And it's been super cool over the last couple of years. Unfortunately with COVID, it didn't allow us to travel. So Zoom was awesome. They'd send us some samples, we'd cup it over Zoom and make some decisions that way. And a lot of our farmers have Instagram accounts. So they're sending us photos and, through WhatsApp or Instagram and showing us updates and saying, like, I have this varietal, I'm thinking about processing it this way. What do you think? And then, of course, giving feedback from our collective members because they're just like super enthusiastic coffee nerds. So they're giving us feedback and I'm giving that back to the farmers. It means a lot. And I love hearing it. And it always makes its way back to the farm. So it's super important.
Interesting. Yeah. I didn't even think about that part of being in the coffee collective, is being able to give direct feedback and having that closer relationship. So it sounds like anybody who is purchasing these smaller microlots of coffee, you can feel good about making that purchase. So I know for sure that this is not inexpensive coffee, right? All of the good quality coffee, you pay for it. And there's good reasons to pay for it. It shows up in the cup, and it also is good for the entire chain of people that are involved in getting that coffee to you.
I love when that comes up with a customer, when they're like, oh, wow, that's 2021 or 22 or fill in the blank. But in most restaurants, you're paying between $15 and $18 for like a glass of wine or a cocktail that you're having one. And this bag of coffee is probably going to last you a week or more. And so when you think about that, I think, or craft beer is not maybe that much, but you have a couple and then that's a bag of coffee. So we like to equate it to that. And through the education of explaining just how much work and how many hands touch that coffee before we even get it, it's important.
Yeah. Now, isn't coffee also a commodity that is on the decline, like decreasing? I think there are things fighting against coffee at this point, some diseases, some fungal infections that I believe I heard about over the past few years. What's going on there?
Well, the Roya fungus has been something that farmers have been battling for a really long time. And up until a few years ago, most farmers didn't even have to worry about it if they were at, a specialty grade altitude of 1,200 or higher, 1,200 meters. It just never made it that far. And now it is. It decimated one farm that we work with in Colombia, and they're at 1,800 meters. They literally replanted close to 300,000 coffee trees.
Wow.
It took them several years to do it because what they did is a lot of the Roya killed the trees. They were able to save some of it so they could stay in some sort of production while they were waiting for the trees to have a harvest, because it's similar to wine. It takes 3 years for it to produce anything. So what they did is they started planting while they were taking stuff out. So they were still able to have some sort of, coffee coming in. But there are disease resistant varietals. In the past, they didn't cup as well, or they, for non-coffee people, they didn't taste as good as some people would prefer in a specialty market. But it's a compromise, and now there's different other varietals that they're able to blend together for a better cup quality, and the education of the growers knowing what they have, and being able to cup coffee and taste it is really important too.
So is this still an ongoing issue? It sounds like it got worse because the fungus adapted to reach higher altitudes.
Yes. And unfortunately, what my take is, shade grown, that moisture invites that fungus. So keeping everything pruned so it's not overgrowing and keeping the trees lower. Just some education has really helped. There's definitely, it's not gone by any stretch, but there's more knowledge out there, so they're able to combat that. But yeah, we've definitely seen lower lot amounts, lower production overall year over year from different farms due to different issues with, there is a beetle that likes to burrow in the cherry. There's all kinds of different things that the farmers are dealing with, pests and the fungus.
Yeah. I don't think we've ever talked about this on the show. You mentioned the cherry. What is a coffee bean? Where does it come from?
Well, so if you can envision the size of maybe a cranberry, and there's two seeds inside, so there's like flat sides. Two normally. If it's a pea berry, the seed doesn't dichotomize into two and you just get one. That's how you get a pea berry, and it just happens naturally. Can't force it. And it has several layers on the outside of the seed. That is the bean. And then all of that is removed, the cherry, and then it's washed and dried.
So it's in literally a cherry. It's like this.
Yeah.
Is it the seed of a cherry?
Is sweet. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. It's a tree with fruit, and it flowers beautifully, just like it's very similar to a citrus tree. And the fragrance is intoxicating. It's amazing. And then you get the fruit. I wish that I
find food very interesting because we're very far removed from the source of food these days, right? And so I don't even remember, it wasn't that long ago when I found out, hey, like a coffee bean comes from a cherry, right? That's it was really interesting when I found that out. I'm like, oh, okay, that actually explains a lot about the extra flavors that you can get out of it. And going back to the way it was processed, the way you'd explained it in the beginning, the fruitiness coming out. So, all right. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about diversification a little bit. So markets are finicky. We have more ups and downs in markets, and these producers have their ups and downs as well. So what are they doing to help stabilize their businesses? How are they diversifying?
As the younger generation start taking over, you definitely feel that influence. And I think it's amazing. We saw a lot of that in Guatemala on our last trip before COVID, ironically. We had just been in Costa Rica and Guatemala about a week before everything shut down. And we visited this 100-year-old coffee farm in the middle of Guatemala City. And the kids had started to take over, and they had an idea of, why don't we make this more of a destination? We want to bring roasters here. We want to educate them. We want to connect them to the farmers. We want to connect them to the process. So they built these really comfortable, cool yurts. There's about 4 yurts and really nice showers and bathroom facilities and an outdoor kitchen and an outdoor coffee bar and a fire pit. And so we just stayed right there on the farm. You would definitely, if someone had just plopped you there, you would never know you're in the middle of Guatemala City. It was wild and so cool. The mill is just around the corner. So we went and cupped a bunch of coffees and then going out for the day and visiting all the farms. And now they are offering that to the public. You don't have to necessarily be tied to a coffee company or be a roaster or buyer necessarily. They really want to connect people to the process. And I think it's great. I think there is a genuine interest in where our food comes from and the process. and what goes into it. I think people are educating themselves. And so there's definitely more of a draw for that. And yeah, and there was another farm that I visited after COVID that really diversified in that they were already offering tours to the public of the facility and the processing, and they grow some coffee there as well. But when we went back, it was like a Disneyland for coffee. They had a restaurant, they had yoga classes if you wanted, they had some classes on processing, farm tours. It was great. You know, it's very different than what our normal experience is, but hats off to them for trying to find other ways to get more people interested in what they're doing.
That sounds amazing. It sounds like the ultimate trip for a coffee geek, right? Somebody who wants to just immerse themselves in what is this thing really all about? This industry, how does this industry work?
Yeah, and that is just a 10-minute tuk-tuk drive from Antigua, you know, the second place I was talking about.
Yeah.
So they've really, and they're on Instagram, and they're getting the word out there and just trying to educate people. And I think it's super cool.
Amazing.
I know where Jim's next vacation is going to be.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think it would be cool to go just, Jen, from all the pictures that you guys send out on the collective stuff and seeing, like, actually meeting the people that are like hand sorting everything, meeting the farmers that are caring for it. That's one thing I didn't realize till the stories started coming out, that everything was all hand screened and sorted, and how it worked on the hierarchy at the farms of who gets to sort and who gets to do the drying process. And I think in 10 years, I've had 2 broken beans out of all my bags. That's how well taken care of this coffee is. It's just quite amazing.
Absolutely.
But one thing I wanted to share about is your education program you brought up earlier. I remember bringing my oldest son, Matthew, God, it was over 10 years ago, to the main roasting plant. And we did one of your cupping classes, which I had never done. And it was just another way of me learning how to taste the notes and things, including coffee. And I'm glad that y'all still continue to expand that education program, because it's fabulous. I will say what I learned there, besides how to cup coffee, was you can have too much coffee and actually get dizzy and drunk off coffee. So much. I spent the afternoon on the couch spinning.
Oh, no.
It's incredible.
Hot tip. If you are over caffeinated, have a banana. The potassium slows that down and helps you metabolize it a little faster. Yeah, it definitely will help you out with that. I'm so sorry. That's awful. That's happened to me once on
to my future self 10 years later.
Right.
Like, so you've experienced that.
It happened once, and I never want to experience it again. Yeah, we were cupping a lot of coffee, and I overdid it. It's just like stomach ache, and it didn't feel awesome.
I literally felt drunk, minus losing my lunch. It was very interesting.
Oh, no.
But I have been cautious with caffeine since. It's all good. It's part of celebrating life. I mean, Beacon's been so important to me because it's absolutely delicious. But back when I discovered you guys, when I was living in Ventura, California, I got told by a doctor I had to cut out all alcohol and all grains for quite a while, and to drink a lot of coffee. And so I found Beacon, and so many different flavor profiles. It replaced what I always loved finding in wine, because it's so close to Santa Barbara County, and in fine liquors, was all those different profiles, like the Mescala, you're saying it's smoky. So in the coffee, I could start finding those out and finding where they're grown and how the earth tastes, just like wine. Is like, this is magic to me, because it replaced that with something that was healthier. And my coffee passion has just grown ever since. So thank you guys for doing what you do.
Thanks for all the support.
All right. Well, I think that's a great place to end the show, on the tip of the century. If you're over caffeinated, eat a banana and you will get fixed up in short order. I think the whole show was worth it just for that little tidbit right there. So Jen, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. I'm serious. I'm going to go join the Coffee Collective right now as we hang up from the show. And for all of our guests, this is a wrap. We hope you join us for the next show. And until then, have a great day and be good to each other. Bye-bye.
Thank you.